Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Josh Patrick. Thanks for being on the show, Josh.
My pleasure. Thanks, Whitney.
No, I'm excited for this conversation. I'm looking forward to it just from some things we talked about before we started recording. But I wanted to remind the listeners again to go to Life Bridge Capital, go to the Contact Us page and sign up there. So that way we will actually schedule a call with you so I can speak with you and help you any way that I can. Love to connect with anyone that I haven't talked to yet that's a avid listener of the show. I appreciate you listening. I hope you will share the show. I know I would appreciate it and look forward to speaking to you on the phone, but also in person at the next conference or somewhere. But today, Josh Patrick is on the show. He's the founding principal of Stage 2 Planning Partners, a certified financial planner, a serial entrepreneur, a writer, reader, thinker. He's a contributor to the New York Times You're the Boss blog, as well as the author of the Stage 2 Planning Partners blog titled Creating Value. He's also the author of Sustainable, a fable about creating a personable and economically sustainable business. You can purchase that on Amazon, or you can go to sustainablethebook.com. And so, I've learned that Josh is really an expert in helping people with their businesses, helping them understand the cash flow of the business and working with employees. And all of us are business owners and need to understand the cash flow within our business and how we manage our employees and working with them. And he's going to help us understand some of that today. But Josh, give the listeners a little more about who you are, and let's jump in.
Okay, well, I'll give you a really fast background. I started off in business in 1976 after I graduated from college, which means I'm really old. And I started off with a part-time employee, grew that business. It was a food service and vending company. We fed people who worked in factories from one part-time employee to 90 employees with 4 branches when we sold it in 1995. And during that 20-year period, I arguably made every single mistake a business owner could possibly make. And during that period, what I learned is that mistakes are not necessarily terrible as long as you learn something from them. So that's the first lesson that I want to bring to your listeners today is that, stop beating up people about mistakes. And when a mistake happens, either that you make or especially if your employees make, all you got to do is ask them this simple question: what did you learn? And you have to stay with that question until you get a good answer, because mistakes are fine as long as we learn something from them so we don't do the same stupid thing over and over and over again. And my big problem back when I first started, and I was 26 years old, was instead of taking responsibility for things that went wrong in the business, I would consistently blame others or justify why it wasn't my fault. And unfortunately, way too many business owners do that, especially new business owners, because we like to say to ourselves, life would be wonderful if it wasn't for those idiot employees. And every time I hear that, I want to just take the person and shake them till they get some sense inside them. Because the truth is, without your employees, without having great employees, there is no way in the world you can have a great business. So the first thing you need to be thinking about as you build a business is, how do I get those great employees? And for me, it starts with values. Because if you don't know what your values are, someone's going to put values that you may not want as being what your company is all about. And you not only need values, but you also need clarifying statements around each of those values so people know what you mean. So let me give you an example, Whitney. One of my core values is personal responsibility. And for me, personal responsibility means I don't blame others and I don't justify my actions. When things go wrong, whether it's my fault or not, I take responsibility for it so I can get the maximum learning. So now people know when I say personal responsibility, they have context around it. And I have a tool to use with my employees to help them do the right things. Does that make sense?
It does. I was thinking about that. I was trying to get that taking some notes about what you're saying there. Personal responsibility for maximum learning, and so I'm taking the responsibility. So I'm learning from it, and I understand. Like I mean, when I hire the next employer, I'm working with that same employee. I'm going to better understand how to direct them, how to train them, how to teach them, and ultimately not make the same mistake again.
Right, right. And another one of my values is simplification. And my definition, very simply, is we take the complicated and make it simple. We don't do what most MBAs do, which is take the simple and make it complicated.
No, it has to be simple, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it has to be simple.
Well, the reason I like blue collar businesses so much is that blue collar business owners tend to be no BS sort of guys. And they're mostly guys. Sometimes they're women, but the owner of the business tends to be a no BS person, because the truth is blue collar industries are no BS industries. If you're going to try to, make yourself, you can't run a blue collar business and be a wannabe. You can run an information business, which never goes anywhere, and be a wannabe because it really doesn't cost you anything. But if you have a distribution company, you have trucks and warehouses and employees. If you have a construction company, you have materials and offices and employees. And if you're a manufacturing company, you have manufacturing equipment and buildings and employees and inventory and receivables and payables. And hopefully you own the real estate you operate in. But those sort of businesses, you can't afford to BS your way through, or you won't be in business for very long.
Hmm. I like that. Yeah, no BS people. We don't have time for that, right? And so we don't have time for that. Let's get to the point, right? Let's make it simple and get it done. Move forward. Give us some examples that are ways you're helping these businesses, or ways, common mistakes that they make, in their cash flow or in working with employees, or maybe we get to both of those things, and that you see that people struggle with.
Well, first of all, you have to realize every mistake that people make affects their cash flow, because it affects the way their business can run. For example, we have 4 areas we want people to really focus on in cash flow. One is values, which leads to mission statement, leads to purpose. The second is operational relevance, which is delegation. The third is recurring revenue, which leads to marketing and sales. And the fourth is systemization, because no business runs well without systems. And the bigger you get, the more important systems are. And there's a real disconnect between business owners and their employees around systems, in that many business owners hate systems because they don't want to do things in a specific order, but their employees love them because it gives them a definition for what excellence is. And your employees want to do a good job. You just need to help them get there. So let's start off with delegation, because I think that's the biggest roadblock that keeps business owners from growing their business. And the reason, very simply, is that when you start to delegate, I mean, Whitney, I assume you've delegated at some time in your life.
Yes. I had numerous assistants or employees that are helping me on a daily basis.
And my bet is that when you first started delegating, it didn't go so well.
Yes, I had to develop a system. I had to. It was a big learning curve.
Right. And by the way, that's true for literally everybody. I mean, if you go to work in a big company, the biggest complaint people have is my boss is a jerk. And the reason the boss is a jerk is because the boss either micromanages or does what I call seagull management, which is, they tell you what to do and then they fly back in and crap all over the place. Or they, they don't do it. But the same thing is true with private business owners, is that delegation is not a natural act, because we as human beings are not naturally trusting, at least in my opinion. And we don't tolerate mistakes very well, which are the 2 pieces that have to happen for you to be a great delegator. If I delegate, I can't just abdicate. I can't walk away and then come back 3 weeks later and blow up because you didn't do what I wanted you to do. There has to be an inspect function as part of delegating. Whitney, when you delegate, I bet you go back now the first couple of days after you delegated just to check in to make sure things are going okay.
Yes, no doubt.
And I bet that when you first started, you didn't do that.
Yeah, it's a process, right? I don't want to micromanage, like you're talking about that seagull approach, jumping back in, and I, because I have a tendency to do that, and I try to jump back and say, okay. And I actually this happened a couple of days ago, and because it's just fresh on my mind, and so I had an assistant that was doing something, and I jumped back in and said, "Well, could you do this? Could you do that?" And like she ain't got the task done yet. She was going to do it, so and finally she said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do that." And I just said, "You know what? Let me get out of your space for a minute. Let me leave you alone. Let me remember why you're doing this, and let you do your work."
Yeah. And so we as business owners, if we want to grow our business, have to work through others. And you can't work through others unless you learn the art of delegation. And in my opinion, delegation is more an art than it is a skill.
Mm.
Because, you have to, people are different. When things don't go well, do you tell or do you ask? In other words, what would happen if is my very favorite question in the world. And when someone says, well, I can't do this, and I say to them, so, well, what would happen if you could? It sort of changes the conversation completely. And then they often will say to me, well, I don't know. And you know what my question then is?
What?
Well, why don't you pretend you know? And when people pretend they know, it's actually the real answer to the question anyhow. So it doesn't matter whether they tell you or they pretend they're telling you, it's still the same answer.
Mm. I really like the question, what would happen if? That's good.
Yes, my very favorite question in the world. I probably use it with myself several times a day, and I use it with people that work with me several times a week. Because all it does is it opens up possibilities. And it's too easy for us to say, that won't work. I can't do it. It won't work here. Our customers don't like it. And if I say, well, what would happen if our customers actually did like it? Or what would happen if we went to our customers and we talked to them about this? Or what would happen if I put together a customer advisory board and had them help us craft the offer that we have for them?
Mm.
These are all, sort of ways of using that question. And it's three different, scenarios right there. But what would happen if is a really, really powerful question.
What would happen if we learned to delegate, right?
Right.
So
Our business might grow.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You might gain more time to do more important tasks, right?
By the way, another thing which might fit in with your listeners is of creating a cash flow positive or cash flow flush business is making sure that you price what you're doing effectively. One of the things I think in real estate, which I just don't understand, is people buying investment real estate that doesn't cash flow. And
Doesn't
their
make any sense
reason,
to me either.
and the reason they buy the real estate is, well, they say, this is what they tell me. They say, well, it's going to go up in value. Is it going to go up in the value enough to overcome the deficit cash flow that you're taking money out of your pocket to do that with? So, that's an example of pricing being bad with the investment that you're making. And one of the things that you always need to be doing, in fact, almost when I work with any business that has less than 5 employees, I can almost guarantee you the pricing model stinks. And unless they fix that pricing model, they're never going to have enough excess cash in their business to allow them to afford to hire the people to grow.
So
And
elaborate on what we're pricing, or like is this something we're selling? Is this something the way we're paying employees? What
no,
exactly?
it's actually, this is around what we're selling.
Okay.
So if I'm investing in real estate and I'm going to buy a 10-unit apartment house and I spend, $2 million on this property and my cash flow doesn't pay for my costs, it gave me a reasonable return that allows me to actually have a business out of it. My answer for that investment needs to be no, because I'm not really sure whether that property is going to go up in value or down in value. What I am sure about is I have a bank note to pay every month. I have property taxes to pay every month. I may or may not have utilities to pay. And if I can't pay those things, I have to take money out of my pocket. I'm on the road to bankruptcy. I'm not on the road to financial freedom.
Yes. Yeah. Because we can't control the market, right? I mean, we
No.
can't control the market, and you don't know what it's going to do for sure. So, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And cash flow is one of the big things. One of three big things that we always talk about. Yeah, you gotta buy for cash flow, not appreciation. Uh,
Right.
but
I mean,
yeah, and other
appreciation, if it
aspects.
happens, is great.
Yeah. All right.
But if I bought my house, the house that I bought for appreciation, I'd be sorely disappointed because I bought this house 34 years ago and it's barely doubled in price since I bought it. That's a stupid investment.
You got to have a house, right? But
Well,
yes,
you got to live someplace. So I didn't buy it for appreciation.
right.
But as it turns out, if I sell it, I'm not going to go live in a tent. So the house that you live in is not a financial asset, really,
Right. Right.
at least in my opinion.
Would you help us to better understand maybe some ways that you've delegated things on a daily basis that we're probably working on as well to create more time for yourself, or help us to be better at delegating, like you talked about, because it's really it's not so much a skill, or maybe you can elaborate on how you said that again.
Well, here's the first question I want people to ask. I want you to write down everything that you do during the week. And then I want you to write down next to all those things that you do during the week, how much you would have to pay somebody else to do it. And if anything comes up that's $15 an hour or less, you need to delegate that today. Because if you're working for 15 bucks an hour and that's where you think you need to spend your time, there's no way you can build a sustainable business. You want to be thinking about, what can I do that's worth $5,000 an hour, not what can I do that's worth $15 an hour. And after you delegate all those $15 an hour jobs, then you want to go up to $20 an hour jobs, then up to 25. And then you finally want to keep raising that number till the only thing that you're actually doing in your business are things that create at least $1,000 per hour.
Mm.
So that's a really good way to start thinking about what I should be delegating. Because the truth is, what you should be delegating is going to be different for every business. But every business can figure out what it would cost for somebody else to do that particular activity. And if you start saying, let's say I have 5 hours per week worth of work, and I'm going to delegate that to somebody else because it's $15 per hour, I have now created 5 hours of time for me to work on strategic activities which move the needle. Tactical activities just produce a product, and other people should be doing that if you're going to build a sustainable business that somebody else wants to own. At the end of the day, people don't buy your business for you. They buy your business for your systems, your people, your cash flow, all sorts of things, but not you. So you need to get yourself out of the day-to-day operations if you want to have a business that somebody else would want to own at some time. Doesn't mean you want to sell it. It just means you've done that. And by doing that, you've made yourself, your business, and your cash flow all a lot more valuable.
I like that. Really having the exit in mind, right? I mean, as you're going through this process, and how people are going to buy your business because of the systems that you have in place, and it's those systems and those, that go down to the employees as well. That it's going to make it successful, right? Make it grow.
Yeah. Now, you don't have to build your business to sell it, by the way. There are other strategies you can use to get to financial independence that does not include selling your business. But if your business is sale ready, you're going to make a lot more money from it. You're going to have a lot more fun, and you're going to have a lot less headaches than if you're running your business on a day-to-day basis and your job is a head firefighter and all you do all day is put out fires.
Hmm.
That's how people get burned out.
Josh, how did you, well, I know you started with one employee, you went to 90 employees, but now someone starting their own business, how do you recommend we learn some of these things that we need to put in place how do we learn how to work with employees and start to, know what we need to delegate? Because I know initially it seems like such a big task, and you really laid it out there. Write everything down. But how do we start to understand how to operate a successful business if we've never operated a business before?
That's a really good, that's a great question. And a lot of it's trial by error. And the truth is, most people aren't curious enough to learn how to run a good business. So the business always stays small. Let me give you a couple of statistics, which I think are really important to know when you're talking about building a business. There's 28 million businesses in the United States. Only 6 million businesses have any employees at all. That means
Wow.
22 million businesses have no employees. Only 300,000 businesses do more than $5 million in sales, and only 150,000 businesses do more than $10 million in sales. So that shows that less than 1% of business owners ever learn how to delegate, because if you're going to run a $10 million business, you have to know how to delegate. Now, I had a client that had a nice little $6 million wealth management firm. They had 15 employees. Everything ran through the owner. She wouldn't give up any responsibilities at all. So as a result, their business is sort of stuck at the size it is. It can't grow because she's not willing to let others take the ball and run with it. Everything has to run through her. Now, she's got a nice little business, but it's not especially saleable. Now, I'm going to bet that when the time comes to buy, she'll find a buyer, because in that particular space, there's a bunch of dumb buyers.
It goes back to that trust and allowing people to make mistakes, doesn't it?
She would. If you made a mistake with her, she would excoriate you. She just tear you apart. I remember I made a bad mistake with them, and it was something that was right before I ended up getting cancer, so I couldn't actually fix the mistake before it became bad. And it was like, even though I had helped them grow from a profit of $140,000 to $2 million a year, this $300,000 mistake was like the worst thing that ever could have happened in the world. And it really wasn't a mistake. It was a bad hiring we made. And we all make bad hires.
Yeah.
But, and I have a system that really cuts that down. It didn't happen to work in that particular time. But between the time we hired and the time they let him go, I ended up getting cancer, so I couldn't really be involved on as much as I wanted to with this client. But still in all, it didn't make me want to get out there and take any risk, because my head got chopped off.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you can't do. I mean, this is something I did, which was terrible, was that my first 4 years in business, anytime somebody made a mistake, which was every day, I would scream at them. Now, all they did was hide the mistakes, which is really bad, or plot to get even with me, which is really bad also. So either one of those outcomes was a really bad outcome. And it was my fault for doing that. And after I stopped screaming at people, people kept thinking I was a screamer, but the truth was I wasn't, and their actions changed, and they started telling me the truth more and more. Or at least they would have a conversation with me about that. So it's really important that if you're going to grow, I mean, first of all, it's a really rare person that grows a business that big. And the people who do all are curious. They get involved in their trade associations, which all have training how to become a better business owner. They get into masterminds where they're working with other business owners in a small group, with groups like Vistage or Young Presidents Organization, or they just do an informal peer-to-peer group, and they get together and say, hey, I've got a problem with this employee. What should I do? And they get advice from their peers, and they read books, and they go to programs, and they learn what best practices are, and they're willing to be uncomfortable while they're learning new skills. Because, Whitney, when you learn a new skill, I'm going to bet that you don't do it really well right out of the box.
That's pretty safe to say.
I could say that with everybody. It's not, when you ride a bike, do you not fall off a few times at first? And what do? You get up, you learn from that fall, and you go on and you learn how to ride a bike. Well, it's the same thing as we're adults. We have to learn how to ride a bike. And frankly, we're going to make mistakes along the way. So we need to learn how to do that.
Wow. Well, Josh, unfortunately, we are running low on time, but a few more questions before we have to go. I like asking every guest, how you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours. Is there something recently you've done that's like, okay, every business has to do this?
Well, I won't say every business has to do this, but I would say you need to have a way of being found, and you need to have a way of putting together uh, a business model that doesn't have you working one-on-one with people. Like the thing we're putting together right now is a online course followed up by a membership, which is going to help blue collar businesses learn how to crack the cash flow code in their business. Now they're going to learn the skill set they can do over an 8-week period. And after that 8-week period, if they want help, then we're going to have a membership that they'll be able to join where they'll be getting ongoing coaching for solving the issues that will allow them to have a business that creates excess cash, not one that eats cash and they're always wondering where the next paycheck is coming from.
Hmm. Good stuff. So what is the one thing, if you had to pick one thing that's contributed to your success?
Getting clear on my values. If you're values led and values driven, life becomes a whole lot more fun because you stop working with people who don't fit in with what your belief system is. So in other words, one of my core values is win-win or don't play. So if we're not going to have a relationship that's going to be a win-win, I'm not going to get into it.
I love that. Win-win or don't play. I like
Yep.
that a lot. And tell us, before we have to go, tell us how you like to give back.
Well, I do. It's really interesting is that my nonprofit really isn't nonprofit. I work with businesses for nothing who I really like their mission and I like what they're doing. And I give back in that way because I think that business is actually the strongest force for good in the country. And when I say business, I'm talking about privately held business. I'm not talking about public companies because I don't believe that they actually add value to the communities a lot, except for jobs. But if you go to a local business like you're concerned about your local reputation. You're concerned about what makes your business great. And I want to work with businesses for free that get that message out to other people. For example, I work with an organization called the Purposeful Planning Institute. Their job is to help other advisors do purposeful planning with their clients. They were cash flow negative. If they didn't get to cash flow positive, they wouldn't stay. So I work with them on getting the cash flow positive. I work with another group called the Sudden Money Institute. And with Sudden Money, they're about transitions. And frankly, we as individuals handle transitions really badly. And Susan Bradley, the founder of that group, has put together a great set of tools for helping people manage transitions. I believe in that mission. I believe it's an important thing to do. She wouldn't be able to hire me for my normal fee, so I work with her on a semi-trade. She gets a lot more value than I do out of it as far as monetary goes. But I get the satisfaction of watching her group move out into the world and provide value to other people through her members.
Nice. No, thanks for doing that and sharing that, Josh. That's incredible. But very important. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you, learn more about you, how to connect, and even how to get a copy of your book again. You might remind them.
Okay, I have like 19 websites. Are you ready for all the websites? my main website that deals with creating excess cash in the business is www.sustainablebusiness.co. That's sustainablebusiness.co. I have a podcast there. I've got my videos we do on a weekly basis there. I have a blog there. I have tons of information that you can get. So that's the main place to go. If you're interested in doing my little quiz to find out if you're on the road to financial independence, go to thecashflowcode.com and you can take the quiz. It takes about 7 minutes. If you want to find the book, it's at sustainablethebook.com or at Amazon. But if you buy the sustainablethebook.com, you get a free 20-minute coaching session with me. And I wrote a 38-page cheat little ebook on how to implement all the stuff I talk about in the book, Sustainable. Oh, by the way, if you want to just email me, you can go to jpatrick@stage2planning. That's the number 2, jpatrick@stage2planning.com.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by Life Bridge Capital. Life Bridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. Life Bridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.